Dust and silence. That's all he left her. The man who'd whispered promises under prairie stars now vanished into the vast indifference of the plains, leaving Elara clutching their newborn son to her chest, the icy wind tearing at her thin coat like claws. Betrayal felt colder than the Montana air stealing her breath. Abandoned, discarded, left for dead in a wilderness that swallowed hope whole. But the wild has its own watchers, its own justice. And sometimes the deepest betrayals awaken a strength buried beneath the scars, the strength about to be tested and unexpectedly protected. Her ending hadn't been written yet, not by a long shot. 6 months. That's how long Elara had clung to the dream spun by Corbin Thorne. She'd stepped off the stagecoach onto Montana soil with little more than hope and the secret life growing inside her. Corbin had met her himself, riding a fine chestnut gelding, exuding a confidence that seemed as vast as the territory he claimed. He was handsome, attentive, painting visions of a sturdy ranch house filled with warmth, a stark contrast to the lonely life she'd known back east as an orphan seamstress. His words were a balm to old wounds. He spoke of ambition, of carving a legacy from the tough land. The Circle T Ranch was his domain, isolated deep in a river valley, miles from the nearest dusty town. He called it potential. To Elara, it felt like the edge of the world. When she discovered she carried his child, his swift proposal of marriage felt like salvation. He'd urged her to travel west ahead of him, citing critical business he needed to finalize before settling down. She'd believed him, wanted to believe him. Life at the Circle T settled into a routine punctuated by Corbin's frequent absences. He pursued deals, expanded herds, his eyes always fixed on some distant horizon Elara wasn't invited to share. She kept busy, trying to carve her own space, tending a small garden, sewing, observing. She noticed things. The way Corbin's smile rarely warmed his calculating blue eyes, the tight set of his jaw when things didn't go his way, the almost casual cruelty he showed towards a stray dog or a hand who made a mistake. His foreman, a quiet man named Barlow, watched Corbin with a wary deference that bordered on fear. Elara felt a growing unease, a subtle dissonance between the man who wooed her and the man who ran this ranch with an iron fist. She tried to dismiss it as frontier toughness, the necessary grit to succeed. She focused on the baby growing within her, stitching tiny clothes, pouring all her yearning for belonging into this unborn child. Corbin spoke of their son, their future, but his gaze seemed to skim past her, already calculating his next move on a board where she was merely a temporary piece. Then, weeks early, the baby arrived. A son. Small, fierce, perfect. The birth was hard, attended only by Barlow's wife, fetched from miles away. Holding her child, Elara felt an overwhelming surge of protective love, a purpose sharper than any fear. But Corbin's reaction extinguished that fragile warmth. He entered the room, his polished boots echoing on the rough floorboards. He glanced at the infant, his face impassive. "A boy," he stated, his voice flat, devoid of paternal pride. "That complicates the timeline." Complicates? The word hung in the air, cold and sharp. In the days that followed, Corbin grew distant, evasive. Talk of marriage ceased. He spoke instead of needing privacy, of delicate negotiations with a powerful family back east, the Hendersons, mentioning their daughter, a lucrative land merger. His gaze slid past Elara and the baby as if they were inconvenient shadows. The chill deepened when she overheard fragments of a hushed, angry conversation between Corbin and Barlow near the stables. "Can't risk exposure, Barlow. Not with the Henderson deal closing. Everything hinges on this." Corbin's voice was like chipped flint. "She has to disappear. Quietly. Naturally. This land, it swallows people. Disappear. Henderson deal." The pieces slammed together in Elara's mind with brutal force. She and her son weren't complications. They were liabilities to be erased for a wealthier bride, a bigger empire. The promises, the shared future, all calculated lies. Bile rose in her throat, But years of quiet endurance kept the panic hidden behind a calm facade. She couldn't let him see her fear. 2 days later, Corbin approached her, his face arranged in lines of false concern. "Elara," he said, his voice smooth as river stone. "It's too exposed here for the baby. Too rough. I've prepared the old line shack up in Coyote Draw. It's secluded, sheltered. Much better for you both. Just for a short while, until I finalize things here." Coyote Draw. A name whispered by hands only in reference to its remoteness, its decay. Secluded wasn't shelter, it was isolation. "When should we expect you?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral, her eyes lowered. "Soon," he answered, already turning away, impatient. "Barlow will bring more supplies in a week or so. Pack light." He seemed relieved, eager to be done with it. He didn't ask to hold his son. He didn't offer a word of comfort. He was already moving on. Tomorrow, he would lead her not to safety, but to a place chosen for its silence, its ability to erase inconvenient lives. The charming rancher was gone, leaving only the predator beneath. The journey to Coyote Draw felt like a funeral procession. Corbin rode ahead, rigid in the saddle, never looking back. Elara followed on a placid mare, her son bundled tightly against her chest, his sleeping form a small point of warmth against the creeping chill of dread. The landscape grew progressively bleaker, the familiar shapes of the Circle T swallowed by rolling, empty hills. The cabin was a derelict hovel clinging precariously to a windswept slope. Timbers sagged, chinking had fallen away, and part of the sod roof gaped open to the sky. Wind moaned through the cracks, carrying the scent of decay. Inside, dust motes danced in the dim light, filtering through the gaps. A broken table, a rusty cot frame, and a cold, ash-filled hearth were the only furnishings. Corbin unloaded the supplies, a meager sack of cornmeal, a side of salt pork, coffee, 2 threadbare blankets. Barely enough for days, let alone the weeks he implied. "Should be comfortable enough," Corbin stated, his voice hollow. He remained framed in the doorway, unwilling to step fully inside. "Barlow has instructions. He'll check on you." Elara finally met his eyes, letting him see the knowledge there. "You aren't coming back, are you, Corbin?" A flicker of surprise, then annoyance crossed his face. He forced a harsh laugh. "Don't be foolish. I have obligations." He swung back onto his horse, gathering the reins. "Best stay inside. Wild animals." He glanced briefly, coldly, at the bundle in her arms, then spurred his horse, riding away without a backward glance, swallowed by the vast, uncaring landscape. The sound of his horse faded, leaving only the whisper of the wind and the sickening weight of absolute abandonment. The moment he vanished, Elara sank onto the dusty floor, the full horror washing over her. Tears threatened, but a small, determined cry from her son snapped her back to reality. She looked down at his tiny face, his utter dependence. No, she wouldn't break. Corbin Thorne wanted her to fade away, a sad story whispered on the wind. He underestimated the steel forged in loneliness, the fierce love ignited by motherhood. She got to her feet, surveying the squalid cabin not as a prison, but as a temporary fortress. Survival mode engaged. She used mud and dry grass to plug the worst gaps in the walls. She cleared the hearth, found a pitifully small stack of damp wood left behind. Another cruel calculation by Corbin. She discovered a sluggish spring nearby, half hidden in thorny brush. Water, fuel, shelter. Basic, but a start. Corbin had left an axe, likely assuming she lacked the skill or strength. She proved him wrong, finding a deadfall tree and methodically chopping, the rhythmic thud a counterpoint to her racing heart. Each swing was defiance. Each gathered branch, a small victory. As she worked, she scanned her surroundings constantly. The isolation was absolute, yet the feeling of being watched prickled at her senses. Was it just the vastness, or was Barlow lurking, ensuring Corbin's plan unfolded? One morning, she found a single, half-erased boot print near the spring, too large for her own. The uncertainty tightened the knot of fear in her gut. She rationed a meager food with painstaking care. Days blurred. She talked to her son, sang softly, her voice a frail shield against the oppressive silence. She told him stories of resilience, stories she needed to believe herself. Every night, she barricaded the flimsy door and slept with the axe beside the cot, her senses on high alert. Corbin expected weakness, despair. He didn't realize he'd left her with the one thing more powerful than his ambition, the unwavering will to protect her child. Escape was the only option. But how? And when? Before the food ran out? Before winter truly clamped its icy jaws on the draw? The answer came on the wind. A week after Corbin left her, the sky turned a bruised purple, and the air grew heavy still. Then the snow began. Not gentle flakes, but a blinding curtain hurled sideways by a rising gale. The storm hit Coyote Draw like a physical blow, shrieking through the cabin walls, piling drifts against the door. Elara fought to keep the small fire alive, feeding it slivers of precious wood. Snow filtered down through the hole in the roof, melting into icy puddles on the dirt floor. She huddled on the cot, wrapping herself and her son in every layer she possessed, sharing her body heat against the numbing cold. The baby cried, sensing her rising panic. Outside, the world dissolved into white chaos. This was it. This was how Corbin intended it. The storm as his silent accomplice. For 2 days, the blizzard raged. When it finally subsided, the silence was profound, absolute. The world outside was buried, pristine and deadly. Her food was gone. The last handful of cornmeal, the final greasy scrap of salt pork. Waiting was no longer an option. It was starvation or freezing. Moving offered only a sliver of hope, a desperate gamble against the odds. She recalled Corbin mentioning O'Malley's Crossing, a trading post southwest, spoken with disdain for its rough clientele. Miles away, across snow-drifted, unknown territory. Madness, but staying was certain death. With fingers stiff from cold, Elara bundled her son, layering his clothes, tucking him deep inside her coat. She packed the axe, the empty bucket for melting snow, the last blanket. Strapping the meager bundle to her back, she took a deep breath that scraped her lungs, pushed open the snow-drifted door, and stepped into the blinding, silent wilderness. Walking was agony. The snow, powdery and deep, dragged at her legs, sometimes sinking her to the waist. Each step was a monumental effort. The sun glared off the white expanse, offering light, but no warmth. Keeping the low sun on her left, she pushed southwest, praying O'Malley's wasn't just a figment of desperate hope. Hours crawled by. The sheer scale of the landscape, its brutal beauty, felt suffocating. Doubt clawed at her. Was she leading her son to a faster death? She stumbled, falling face first into a drift, the impact driving the air from her lungs. For a moment she lay there, the cold seeping in, the urge to simply close her eyes overwhelming. A faint whimper from inside her coat. Her son. Life. Purpose. She pushed herself up, gasping, scanning the white horizon. Movement. A dark shape against a distant ridge. A rider? Corbin? Barlow. Checking on his handiwork. Fear, cold and sharp, jolted her back to life. She pushed onward, harder now, driven by a primal instinct to flee, to protect, her ragged tracks scarring the perfect snow behind her. Late afternoon shadows stretched long and blue across the snow. Elara was nearing the end of her strength. Her vision blurred, legs trembled uncontrollably. She desperately scanned for any shelter from the coming night, the deadly cold, a rock outcropping, a stand of trees, anything. And then she saw him, not the distant rider, but closer, materializing from a grove of snow-heavy pines, like a spirit of the winter woods. An Indian man on a spotted pony, the animal almost invisible against the snow. He wore tanned hides, a heavy buffalo robe, his long black hair braided with fur. A rifle lay across his lap. He watched her, utterly still, his dark eyes intense, missing nothing. Elara froze, heart hammering. Fear, cold and primal, gripped her. Fear fed by settlers' tales of violence. Had she traded one danger for another? She instinctively shielded her son. The rider didn't move, his expression unreadable. His gaze took in her exhausted state, the infant hidden in her coat, the desperate trail she'd blazed. His eyes lingered on the small, worn saddlebag tied to her pack, a bag Corbin had provided, adorned with a single, distinctive silver concho, shaped like a bird's wing. Slowly, deliberately, he swung down from his pony, landing silently in the snow. He held up a hand, palm out. Peace. He took one cautious step towards her. Elara flinched back. He stopped. His voice was low, calm. Water. He gestured to skin at his saddle. Thirst burned her throat. She nodded mutely. He approached, offered the water skin. She drank, the cold liquid a shock, then life. She managed to give the baby a few drops. Food, he said, offering a strip of jerky. She chewed the tough, smoky meat, strength slowly returning. Who are you? She whispered. Kaelen, he said, pointing to himself. He gestured vaguely west, towards unseen mountains. Blackfoot. Blackfoot. She was deep in their territory. Kaelen's gaze returned to the silver concho on her bag. He stepped closer, examining the unique bird-wing design. Recognition flickered in his eyes, quickly masked, replaced by a look of grim understanding. He'd seen that design before. Weeks ago, on the bridle of a fast horse ridden by a white man, a man driving stolen Blackfoot ponies under the cover of night. A thief who matched Corbin Thorne's general description. Kaelen had been part of the pursuit. The thief escaped, but the concho was memorable. He looked from the concho, to Elara's desperate face, to the child. He saw the expensive baby wrappings, stark against Elara's poverty. He saw the story. A woman betrayed, abandoned by a man treacherous enough to steal horses, and callous enough to leave his own blood to die. Protecting her wasn't just compassion. It was justice against the thief. Kaelen made his decision. He pointed back the way Elara had come, then shook his head sharply. He pointed southwest. O'Malley's, he said. Far. Snow deep. He looked at her, at the baby. They wouldn't make it. I guide. He retrieved a thick beaver pelt from his pony. Warmth. For child. Elara stared. Guide. Help. A fragile hope unfurled within her. She took the offered fur, wrapping it around her son. The unexpected kindness, the quiet strength in Kaelen's eyes, felt like the first true warmth she'd known in months. Maybe they had a chance. Kaelen moved through the snowbound world with silent competence. He knew the hidden ways, the paths of least resistance. He found shelter, snared rabbits with swift efficiency, built small, discreet fires. He shared his food, showed her how to melt snow in the bucket, pointed out animal tracks. His silence wasn't empty. It was watchful, assessing. He checked their back trail constantly, his senses attuned to the wilderness in a way that awed Elara. He treated the land and its creatures with a respect that shamed Corbin's careless arrogance. Occasionally, his gaze would rest on a sleeping infant, a flicker of something unreadable, sadness, empathy, in his dark eyes before his stoic mask returned. Elara began to trust him implicitly. His quiet capability was a shield against the fear that still lingered. She saw not a savage, but a man of profound dignity, deeply connected to the world Corbin sought only to conquer and exploit. On the third morning, camped in a rocky ravine, Kaelen suddenly went still, listening intently. He crept to the ravine's edge, peering back along their trail. He returned moments later, his expression hard. 2 riders, he breathed, coming fast. Ice flooded Elara's veins. Corbin. He'd come back to silence her for good. What do we do? She whispered, clutching her son. Kaelen's eyes narrowed, scanning the narrow, boulder-strewn canyon ahead. We make stand, he said, his voice tight. Here. He pointed towards the canyon mouth. Good ground. He quickly kicked snow over their tracks, grabbed their meager gear, and hurried Elara toward a jumble of large rocks partway up the canyon slope. "Stay low. Keep Papoose quiet." He vanished behind a rockfall near the entrance, rifle ready, becoming one with the shadows. Elara huddled behind the boulders, heart pounding, muffling her son against her chest, praying for silence. The waiting stretched, each beat of her heart echoing in the frozen air. Then, hoofbeats crunching on snow. Voices. Corbin Thorne rode into the canyon mouth, his face taut with suspicion, Barlow trailing him, looking uneasy. "Tracks end here," Barlow muttered, gesturing. "Maybe she froze." "Maybe," Corbin snapped, his eyes sweeping the shadowed rocks. "But I want proof. Find her." He nudged his horse forward. The instant Corbin passed Kaelen's position, the Blackfoot Scout moved. He stepped out, rifle aimed squarely at Barlow. "Drop rifle," Kaelen ordered, his voice sharp. Barlow reacted instinctively, swinging his weapon up. Kaelen fired. The shot slammed through the canyon. Barlow cried out, dropping his rifle, clutching a suddenly bloody shoulder as he swayed in the saddle. Corbin spun, reaching for his sidearm. But Kaelen was a blur of motion, launching himself from the rocks, tackling Corbin, dragging him off his horse. They hit the ground hard. Corbin fought back, fueled by fury and desperation, but Kaelen moved with lethal grace, anticipating, blocking, gaining the upper hand. Seeing them struggle, something snapped in Elara. No more hiding. She scrambled down from her rocky perch, the axe still in her hand, her son held tight. "Corbin!" she yelled, her voice echoing off the canyon walls, raw with fury. Startled by her voice, Corbin lost focus for a critical second. Kaelen struck hard, a blow that rocked Corbin's head back. Kaelen pinned him, a knife appearing instantly, its cold steel pressed against Corbin's throat. Panic flared in Corbin's eyes as he stared up at Kaelen, then flicked towards Elara. His arrogance dissolved into raw terror. "Elara." "Wait." It was Barlow. He misunderstood. "We can fix this." "There's nothing to fix, Corbin," Elara said, her voice shaking but steady. "You left us. You left your son to die in the cold." She stepped closer, letting him see the tiny, bundled life he tried to erase. Cornered, exposed, Corbin's facade crumbled completely. "Damn you," he snarled, straining against Kaelen's hold. "You were supposed to be gone." He glared at Kaelen. "Let me go. I'll pay you. Gold, horses, whatever you want. Just get rid of her." Kaelen didn't respond, his grip tightening, the knife point biting slightly. He looked at Elara, his eyes questioning. Justice was hers to claim too. Elara looked down at the man responsible for her deepest pain. She saw only a sniveling coward, stripped bare. Killing him felt insufficient. Seeing him broken, powerless, was its own form of reckoning. "He needs to answer for what he stole," she said, her voice finding a new strength. "From me, and from others." She glanced meaningfully at Kaelen, thinking of the concho, the stolen ponies. Kaelen understood. He efficiently disarmed Corbin, taking his pistol and another knife from his boot. He bound Corbin's hands tightly. Barlow, meanwhile, watched numbly, clutching his wounded shoulder, offering no interference. Kaelen jerked his head at Barlow. "Ride," he commanded. "Forget this place, or I find you." Pale and trembling, Barlow hauled himself onto his horse and fled the canyon. Corbin glared at Elara, hatred twisting his features. "You'll pay for this," he spat. Elara met his gaze, the last vestiges of fear replaced by cold resolve. "No, Corbin," she said quietly. "You will." The balance had shifted irrevocably in the cold Montana canyon. Kaelen dealt with Corbin Thorne decisively. He confiscated Corbin's horse and weapons, leaving the bound man miles from anywhere, facing the same unforgiving winter he had intended for Elara and his son. His fate now rested with the wilderness, and whatever passed for justice, should he somehow survive the trek back. Men like Thorne, Kaelen knew, built empires on sand. Without power and fear, they crumbled. Kaelen then turned back to Elara. He adjusted Corbin's saddle onto the captured horse for her, ensuring it was secure. Silently, he led her and the baby out of the canyon, resuming the journey southwest. The silence between them now felt different, a shared understanding forged in conflict and survival. They reached O'Malley's crossing the following evening, a rough outpost clinging to a frozen riverbank. Suspicious eyes watched from the saloon and store as Kaelen rode in with the white woman and child. Kaelen spoke briefly with O'Malley, the wary proprietor, arranging shelter for Elara. He traded Corbin's horse for supplies, ensuring Elara had a warm room, food, and firewood to last until the thaw might allow passage further east. Before departing, Kaelen paused beside Elara. He looked down at the sleeping infant, now safe and warm. "He has strong spirit," Kaelen observed, a rare warmth touching his voice. "Like mother." Tears welled in Elara's eyes, tears not of sorrow, but of overwhelming gratitude. "Thank you, Kaelen," she managed. "You saved us. How can I ever repay?" Kaelen simply inclined his head. His gaze touched the silver concho on her saddlebag, then met hers again. "Live well," he said quietly. "Protect the child. Teach him truth." He swung onto his pony. With a final nod, he turned west, riding towards the distant mountains, disappearing back into the vast landscape as silently as he had appeared. Elara watched him go, the cold air bracing against her face. She held her son close, feeling the steady beat of his small heart against her own. She had faced betrayal, abandonment, the raw fury of the wilderness, and she had endured. The naive woman searching for borrowed dreams was gone, reforged in the crucible of the frontier. Turning, she walked towards the flickering lights of the trading post, towards an unknown future. The West remained a harsh, demanding land, but she faced it now not with fear, but with the quiet certainty of her own strength, the fierce love for a child, and the enduring memory of a Blackfoot warrior's unexpected, unwavering protection. Corbin Thorne had tried to write her ending, but Elara was just beginning to write her own story, etched in resilience on the heart of the dusty trail.